Hello everybody, ProtoFox here, coming back at you with another video, and this is another kind of, I guess you would say, looking back. I think that's how I'm going to put it in the title, looking back. Here, we got some 3 3/4 inch G.I. Joe figures, in which you're going to start seeing a lot more on the channel. I did something on Super 7 stuff. Video didn't do entirely well as of right now, but hopefully it picks up. I'm going to be talking more about it because I do collect a lot of things other than Transformers, so I'm going to be featuring other toys on the channel. And one of the other big lines, ironically enough, or coincidentally enough, I should say, is a Hasbro line, is G.I. Joe. I've loved G.I. Joe since I was a kid. Mostly the 3 3/4 inch stuff. I know everybody is really into the classified stuff right now, and just having a discussion with a buddy of mine about these, actually, because he's a big G.I. Joe fan as well, and he's really into the classified stuff. But for me, I prefer my Joes to be in this scale, 3 3/4 inch. I got them on the turntable. I'm not going to spin them around. We're going to take kind of closer looks at them. But anyway, you see a lot of figures here. I recently just reacquired all of these because years ago I had offloaded a bunch of my G.I. Joes that were taking up space. I had downsized a lot of my collection over the years, particularly around the time my son was being born. But in time since, and you can see on the channel with the increasing video toy reviews, I've been acquiring and reacquiring a lot of stuff. But this here was, I don't know, and I have to get some of my facts straight. I don't want, maybe it was a revival of the Real American Hero line, the 3 3/4 inch. We had some commemorative stuff come out here and there around that time, but this was the first time we were getting new styled figures, and they're based on old characters, this, that, and the other. You did get some new redone figures, and this, save for one set of figures, was is just about the entire first wave of them. And we're going to go into them a little bit here, because when these were released, I got this entire set, the entire first wave, and I'm eventually going to track down the last set of figures I need, which is the Neo Viper versus Frostbite. But they came in 2 packs, much like a lot of the commemorative stuff. A lot of it was Toys R Us exclusive. We're done in 2 packs, and even the lines after it. This is the one that started it. This is G.I. Joe versus Cobra. And then after that, you had, God, what was it? Spy Troops, and then Valor versus Venom. I couldn't remember if it was Valor versus Venom or Spy Troops first, but the order was G.I. Joe versus Cobra. Then you had Spy Troops, and you had Valor versus Venom. Now, what's interesting about this first wave, that unlike the majority of the Real American Hero 3 3/4 inch line of figures, where they're the O-ring hip construction, and I'll show some differences. These guys here, and let's take one of my favorite characters here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at all of them. But we got Snake Eyes. They had what they called the T-waist construction, which no O-ring, so it had articulation where you couldn't move the legs out. They weren't on a ball joint, not an O-ring. So, but you still had, really, really good range. Obviously the articulation, the waist turns, thighs move up, knees bend, arms at the elbow, swivel, shoulders, head, all that stuff. I mean, these did just about everything that an O-ring constructed figure could do. And I want to say they went with this design at the time. And again, anybody can correct me in the comments down below. But it's interesting because I don't see a lot of people talk about this line in particular online. That's why I wanted to do this video. But at the time, the Star Wars figures were really, really popular. And that's Snake Eyes, by the way. And here, and we can get it here. We'll talk about it. But Star Wars, was really popular at the time, particularly the prequel trilogy, and that was the design Hasbro had going on for those figures, so that just carried over to G.I. Joe. But with G.I. Joe, they focused a lot on sculpting, and initially going back and doing bits of research, I initially thought I had remembered that the 4 Horsemen initially did all the head sculpts for the toy line. I believe I am actually incorrect in that. I forget who did it. But for some reason, I believe I had read it in a toy fair that that they were the ones who did it. And I'd have to go back, find the issues. I still keep all my Toy Fair magazines and all that. But now let's go in. But you can see the sculpted detail. Damn it. Dropping accessory backpack off. But the sculpted detail on all of them, we're going to take a look at all of them, is really, really good. And Snake Eyes, and it's funny because a lot of people bitched about Snake Eyes in the first film, Rise of Cobra, having lips on the mask. I hate to tell you, that wasn't the first time that happened, and it certainly wasn't the last. But anyway, that's Snake Eyes, and I actually love this Snake Eyes design. And when I do eventually track down the Frostbite Neo Viper 2-pack, I also, as I'm killing everything here, Frostbite Neo Viper 2-pack, I'm also going to track down the redecos, because they did do some redecos of a lot of these figures. Some of them were single-packed, some of them, and then this is Storm Shadow, and I love this look for Storm Shadow. The red and white and black, I mean, those are just some of my favorite colors anyway, but I love how the red works with the ninja hood here. And of course, you know, they came with a full gamut of accessories, much like, you know, Real American Hero Toys did. You know, and so, you know, and a lot, you gotta get them. Sometimes they can be a little hinky to stand up, but mostly they're stable. As you can see, they're all standing here unless I, you know, jolt the table. But Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow were two of my favorite designs. This is one of my favorite designs in general here is Cobra Commander. And I love the detail on the hood because of the way the Cobra insignia runs down past the eyes. But, I mean, these all look good in the sculpting and detailing. And then remember, these came out in 2002 as we have Duke, and really good looking face. He had the helmet molded onto his head. This is 2002. So they look really good. We got the Cobra Moray here. And this one's a really killer one. I forgot how much I like that look on him. And Cobra Moray, we got Wetsuit here. And the cool thing about Wetsuit is that this is actually a mask, so he has a full-on face sculpt. You know, but everybody had same level of articulation in this wave. This was a new Cobra type character. This was the Claws, which is another kind of foot soldier stormtrooper kind of deal. And that's really cool. And they redecoed this a bunch, and as they should. It was really good. And then of course they did a lot. Well, no, maybe not. They did a few of these guys. They redid them with the O-ring construction themselves. They took the designs and then just changed the waist around, which was, again, I like the classic O-ring design. I'm not going to complain. God, why aren't you standing up? There we go. Sometimes they can be a little hinky, but then again, that's with any 3 3/4 inch Joe that doesn't have a figure stand. And then we got Heavy Duty. He, at least in the initial line, he actually replaced Roadblock as the heavy gunner in this line. They did release a Roadblock later. So you had both. I mean, Heavy Duty and Roadblock are both classic characters. Then we've got Gung Ho, which, you know, he looks more of like your standard kind of military dude. But again, as we're kind of looking at all of these, sculpting and detail is really good. And they redid this figure quite a bit. There were quite a few different variants. Paint deco variants within the initial first wave. Originally, I think the green, or this is the original release, and then you had one where the green was a lighter, almost olive drab, and then he had a white shirt, and then I think they did him in, no, they didn't do him in tan, that was Duke. But then they did versions of him with and without the goatee painted on. So, but he, instead of looking like, you know, the old classic gung-ho village person, he looks more like a standard soldier, which is cool. And another one of my favorites here, always been one of my favorites, is Destro. And, you know, some people have said that mask is kind of goofy on him. I actually kind of like it because it looks more static, like he's putting on a helmet, and you can see there, you know, painted on details where it just fits over his ears. But I think he looks good, and I like the idea of that kind of mask instead of a liquid metal kind of face-moving kind of thing. Whatever. But, I mean, that's classic G.I. Joe for you. But, you know, all in all, a lot of people don't really talk about this line too much, and I just wanted to get a video out there looking back at these. But, like I had mentioned, they did redo some of these designs with the O-ring construction. And here we have, and this, and I'll show both, because this was also part of a 2-pack, but you have the O-ring construction on that version of Cobra Commander. And again, you know, classic O-ring G.I. Joes. And I like the O-rings, don't get me wrong. I think they're good. And this one, actually, this is when they were releasing with sound attack weapons. You plug these into certain vehicles and they made noises. I love the O-ring construction, but the thing is the maintenance on these figures. I got a bunch of classic old school G.I. Joes that unfortunately the O-rings are going bad on, so they have to be replaced. And then this was a newer version of Snake Eyes. And again, he's got a mouth molded into that mask. And then this was the variant, which was funny because it was initially, when this variant came out, because this was the 2-pack that came out, initially when the variant came out, the gray and purple, he was more sought after. Now the jet black one, the standard release, apparently was shorter pack than that. So, and I had both versions, unfortunately. Don't have them anymore because, like I said, offloaded. But yeah, just that Cobra Commander design is really cool, and they did do this redecoed in black, which is awesome. But yeah, these all saw different redecos over the years, and then some of them even got the O-ring construction. I know Storm Shadow did for a fact. This was the Snake Eyes going forward. Obviously, Cobra Commander claws. Otherwise, they redid a lot of these figures, or they put out new figures. They only did a few of these with the O-ring, and then everybody else got newer toys. But I also wanted to show as part of this, this was the original insert. This I ended up hanging on to. But this shows you artwork of that first wave. And like I said, I'm missing Frostbite and Neo Viper, but that'll change soon. But that was the front. And then the stuff that, you know, old Hasbro toys came with back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. Then you had a checklist, had the coming soon stuff, showed you some vehicles, stuff like that. And of course, I'm not going to show it lengthwise because, or height-wise, because it won't fit on the camera. But that's really neat. I love that. And then even that Cobra Commander design there, that's the black, silver, and of course red. But those looked, the artwork was really cool. And it just all fit in. Looked really nice. And it was a really nice presentation for this line, for G.I. Joe versus Cobra, that first kind of revival wave. And it did well enough, obviously, because we got Spy Troops and then Valor versus Venom. So there you go. It did well, and of course, then it led to more 3 3/4, you know, 3 3/4 inch figures being the norm with G.I. Joe going forward. You got 30th anniversary, 50th anniversary, and going on. They did do other size classes, like now how they got the 6-inch figures with Classified. They had Sigma 6, which I believe they were 8-inch figures. Of course, they redid a lot of 12-inch figures. This and the other in the old original style G.I. Joe. But I just want to talk about these a little bit because, you know, this line in particular, as I'm just nuking everybody again here, we're going to move these guys down. I'm going to pick those two up again. So yeah, I'm talking about, oh, yeah, these figures are really stable with their construction and everything like that, as I'm continually knocking them over. But this happens, you know. That's what figure stands are for. Little things that plug into their feet. But yeah, I don't see a lot of videos talking about this line, or, you know, I mean, little bits here and there, but, you know, it's almost like that early 2000s run of, real American hero styled figures were just kind of almost forgotten about. And just want to get this out there because I actually had a whole lot of love for this. In early 2000s, Hasbro went through a renaissance with some of their with their lines, redesigning stuff. You had obviously Transformers, Robots in Disguise 01 leading into Armada and stuff like that. And same thing with G.I. Joe, which of course, their success gave way to greenlighting movies and their further success, because at the time, like with Transformers, particularly, it was Beast Machines fell off, and then all of a sudden, we had to do something, but, to get Transformers back in the public eye and be successful again, and RID kicked that off. RID-01 kicked that off. Same thing with G.I. Joe. You really didn't have a lot of American Hero figures in stores outside of different commemorative stuff here and there that were exclusive, usually to Toys R Us. But this was the big kind of relaunch of this style of figure, and it proved to be successful because they got 2 sequel lines after that, and they kept the that size going from here and there. And let's get, you know, the Cobra staff out of the way so you can see that beautiful head sculpt for the hood, because I love that design for Cobra Commander. But anyway, I digress. This is where we're at now. You know, G.I. Joe versus Cobra 2002. I love the line. I think it's great. I got these for a really decent price off of eBay, and just so if it's something that interests you, just keep your eyes out, because they are out there in the secondary. You just got to do some hunting. But all that being said, if you like the video, give it a like. If you did, maybe subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And I say unto you all this: be kind to yourself and fellow human beings, because life is too short. So play on, and I'll see you in the next video.